What's up, everyone? Matt Kajeski here. We are trying something new out, testing some college basketball videos. We've done a lot of these in the past over on Stochastic and Odd Shopper. We're trying some out myself. Plan here is to go through a couple games every day to start, talk any sort of plays we have when it makes sense. Otherwise, go through some analytical profiles of these teams, some deep dives, how they match up, and what we can expect in the games. We'll be working through this as we go. I'm kind of the person just start something, innovate from there, try to improve from there. So if you've watched these videos for any length of time, you kind of know what the deal is. But if you're new, welcome. Let's dive into some college basketball. Leave feedback below. Plan on updating these routinely throughout the weeks as we get into March Madness. But we have a crazy slate tonight. And I feel like every top 10 team is basically on the road. And here we have Tennessee going to Kentucky. This game has a 3-point spread in favor of the road team, Tennessee. That's going to be a common theme. The total in the game is 149.5. What you're seeing on the screen, a lot of major efficiency metrics. Will likely change some of these in the back end, like record, I don't think really is a big thing to really look at for these teams. We don't really care what the record is. We care what the efficiency profile is and how they look moving forward. So this is a rematch, actually a pretty recent rematch. These teams played a couple weeks ago. On January 28th, Tennessee lost that game 78-73. That was on their home floor too. And I think even worse for Tennessee, Kentucky didn't have Lamont Butler, and Andrew Carr played 2 minutes in that game. Now, Kentucky did shoot 50%, yes, 50% from three, and they out-rebounded Tennessee 30-23. I think you see the 50% shooting from three for Kentucky, and that's made even crazier because Tennessee is the number one defense in the entire country right now. They're also the top defense in opponent three-point percentage, so you just got a crazy outcome with Kentucky shooting the lights out. Without Lamont Butler, too, who's about a 40% three-point shooter on the year. But that's basically the path with Kentucky every single game. They will have Lamont Butler back in this contest. Again, he's a 40% three-point shooter. He's also their point guard. Now, this team's also without Kirk Creaser. It has been. So in this previous game, they were basically forced to play Otega Owe at point guard, which is not his position. But outside of that three-point shooting, which, again, Tennessee usually has the answer for, Tennessee basically is the answers across the board. This is the superior rebounding team. Both teams do play a tall lineup, so maybe it's not quite as drastic as what we saw in the first game. But Tennessee, they're 94th in effective field goal percentage, 140th from three. Kentucky actually, for all their defensive weaknesses, they're pretty good at defending the three, but they do rank outside the top 200 in interior defense. This should be what Tennessee tries to exploit across the board. With Milicic throwing those lobs to Akpara, Ziegler can get to the rim, and hopefully he tries to do that more than their first matchup. He shot 11 threes and only made one of them in their first contest. So we'll see what they decide to do. But I think the biggest question in the game is, does Kentucky's elite shooting win out, or does Tennessee's defense? We currently have this projected Tennessee 74.5 points, Kentucky 72.8 points. So that would give a little bit of value to the Kentucky side. I still think this Tennessee defense can shut them down. So my pick in the game, my personal lean would be Tennessee, giving a lot of respect to Kentucky here. And I think if you're looking in the player prop market, you could look at something like Chaz Lanier, over a half assist. He averages about one per game. And this game has a pretty decent total compared to what a lot of Tennessee games usually have, with their adjusted tempo being 329. The next game up for us is a huge Big Ten matchup. Purdue takes on Michigan. Similar story here, except Purdue, 1.5-point underdog, so actually not a road favorite. Total in this game is 150.5, so awesome total here too. Injuries not really a factor in this contest. Another rematch. These teams played on January 24th. Purdue slaughtered Michigan 91-64. That was on their home floor. They did so by forcing 22 turnovers. That has been the problem with Michigan all season long. This team actually has an awesome efficiency profile. They have a very clear advantage inside. They play the Twin Towers. At forward, Danny Wolf, Vlad Golden, both at least 7 feet tall. And Neither of them shoots a lot of threes, but when they do, they've actually been pretty effective. So you do have some floor spacing stuff that you can utilize if you're Michigan. Both of those guys hit 37% from three or better. They just need to play better in this game. In the first matchup, they combined for 15 points. Danny Wolf played limited minutes. It was a blowout, so they kind of just got those guys a little bit of a breather at the end of games because it was out of hand. But Michigan, they're also 65th in the country in three-point percentage. Trey Donaldson and Amari Burnett both hitting over 40% from beyond the arc. The big weakness for this team, we mentioned, it's their turnovers. They are 332nd in turnovers committed. Purdue does force the 70th most turnovers in the country, forced them over 22 times in the first matchup and won the game because of it. So that's the first advantage Purdue has. Second, the offense is awesome. They're 28th or better in all major shooting categories. The team's awesome from three. A solid point guard in Braden Smith and a spot-up shooter in Fletcher Lawyer hitting over 40% of his threes. And I still think you have better overall body of work for Purdue, including, the win in this very matchup. But Purdue has better wins, 3 wins over top 20. Michigan has just one of those. It came against Wisconsin. I will say Michigan has yet to lose in their home building, and this is Purdue's toughest away game since their non-conference. So it's a tough spot. We make this game about Purdue 74.5 points to Michigan 75.5 points. That would give us a little bit of value on the Purdue side. One player prop I think is firmly in play. Fletcher Lawyer under 17.5 in his PRA. Points, rebounds, assists. We show a lot of value on that towards the under. Next game up is Alabama versus Texas. Huge SEC clash. I've never really been the biggest Texas fan. It goes all the way back to the preseason. As far as injuries go, Texas just Chendo Weaver. Alabama, Latrell Wright sells out for the year. Darion Reed missed their last game. We'll see if he comes back. Houston Millette's been out. Alabama is the 3-point road favorite. The total in the game is 165.5. Alabama has just an awesome resume. This team plays just the gauntlet. As far as their schedule goes, they have one loss in the top outside the top 20. That was to Oregon and Las Vegas, the Players Era tournament. They have 3 wins in the top 20. They beat Houston, Illinois, and Texas A&M. Texas has just one top 20 win all year, came by 1 point over A&M, and they have 5 losses in the top 20. They did drop their most recent 2 games as well to number 42 Arkansas and 48 Vanderbilt, so it is a little bit of a slide for Texas. But one of the most surprising things I see when looking at Alabama's efficiency profiles, they actually haven't been shooting the ball that well. They're 183 from 3 on the year. I did isolate this for conference play, basically January 1st onward, and that did jump to 123, but still not quite the shooting you'd expect to see from Bama over the course of the year. Aiden Holloway's hitting over 40%. Mark Sears has experienced some regression in conference play, so that's positive. You'd think better days are ahead. And Texas, if you're pointing out weaknesses on this team defensively, perimeter defense has been a problem at times. They're outside the top 103-point defense. So this is a very important matchup for the Crimson Tide, you're going to see them play like the most efficient basketball in the country. They're either getting shots at the rim or from 3. So the threes could be a little more important here. Texas is worse in every shooting metric compared to Bama, except free throws, interestingly. And they're actually not so bad on the glass, but Alabama plays the 5th tallest lineup in the country. So they're very tricky. Their rim protection is better this year with Cliff Amore. Their defense is no longer an absolute sieve. On paper, Alabama is one of the most talented teams in the country, and I'm just not sure we have the same thing for Texas with Arthur Kaluma leading this team and so forth, Caden Shedrick in your starting lineup. It's not a team I personally like a lot on paper. We have this almost efficient 83 points projected for Bama, 80 for Texas. If you forced me to make a play, I would pick Bama to cover the spread at -3. We continue with SEC showdowns. Florida heads to Mississippi State. This is another road favorite spot. Florida by 2. The total is 151. Only injuries, Kanye Clary from Mississippi State. That is not a new injury. Florida comes off the monumental win over Auburn, while Mississippi State has fallen to 3-5 in their last 8 games. That includes 3 losses on their home court. So yeah, they're home here, but that hasn't mattered a ton for this team. It also is just testament to the SEC. Not even your home games are gimmies. It's hard to win every single time you take the floor in this conference. But Mississippi's defense has lagged of late. They're 84th in perimeter defense. And, man, This is not one I thought I would see. They're outside the top 300 in three-point defense. So you're 84th on the interior, 300th at opposing three-point percentage. Florida can beat you in so many ways with this roster. They're 38th in effective height, which is crazy considering where they came from this year. Mississippi State is 137th in that metric, so you have a height advantage Florida's direction. Florida's 8th in rebounding. Mississippi State's 86th. That's a pretty stark difference there. Florida's the better shooting team, better rebounding team, better defensively across the board. I think the lone hole you could poke in this Florida profile is their strength of schedule. And that was even kind of answered with the Auburn win. So, like Florida so far this year, out of the best teams they've played, they beat Auburn. They traded games with Tennessee. The Tennessee loss they took was very egregious. Ziegler and Milicic sat in that game. Then they lost to Kentucky and Missouri by a combined 7 points. So even their losses are pretty quality. I will say their non-conference was an absolute joke and continues to get worse with North Carolina's implosion. But it's positive to see them take on the best of the SEC. When they lose, it's close largely, except for the Tennessee game. When they win, some of these teams very impressive, beating Auburn and such. Mississippi State is 1-5 against top 20 teams. Their lone win came at home against Ole Miss in overtime. So the body work for this team, especially against the higher end, is not quite there. And Florida's is a little bit better. Currently make this one 78 points in favor of Florida, 74.5 in favor of Mississippi State. This is one I'm actually on the verge of taking with Florida. It is about as, back to the wall as you could possibly get from Mississippi State. Don't love Florida hitting the road. So I'm hesitant, haven't played it yet. But that's where I tend to lean with Florida, just having so many advantages behind their trio of guards and honestly a deep front court that just rotates height. Next up, we'll go back to Big Ten country, sort of. New Big Ten team, new Big Ten blood. UCLA travels out to Illinois. Spread is 5.5 points in favor of Illinois. Total is 148.5. Only injury to mention, Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn for Illinois is questionable. Trey White should play in this game. He returned to practice. This is a big road trip for UCLA. They have floundered every time they've made one of these. They've lost every time they've headed east in conference play. That was to Nebraska, Maryland, and Rutgers. Meanwhile, it's kind of a bad time to catch Illinois outside of Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn. They appear fully healthy. They've had injuries and or foul trouble and or sickness to a bunch of their players. Trey White most recently. Dekasonis had the foul game against Michigan State. Ivasic was out for a while with his mono. But Illinois, even when everyone's been healthy, this team has been a mess shooting the ball. They shoot the 33rd most threes in the country, but they rank 293 in three-point percentage. I will say we did see some evidence that perhaps they're making a change. Typically, this is an analytical program, but if you want to play we're going to shoot threes and score at the rim, you still kind of need your players to be able to hit threes. They haven't been able to, but they only shot 16 in their last game. Is this a shift we see moving forward? Do we see them attack the rim more? I don't know, get to maybe a little bit more mid-range. I'm still a little skeptical, but at least they started to stop shooting less, which has been their Achilles heel all year. If they do shoot less and attack the rim, UCLA might be in some trouble because Illinois does have height, and now with Ivasic back, they have some depth. They play the 17th tallest lineup in the country. They're first in rebounding and 19th in interior scoring. Conversely, UCLA is 140th in rebounding, 189th in interior defense. They did make a lineup change recently, or I guess some sort of rotation change. Ade Mara's coming off the bench, but he's 7'3". He could be an X factor because he's been one of their best defenders and he gives them better rim protection than Bilodeau inside. And you can play these guys together. They might have to. Illinois played a large lineup in their last contest with Ivasic and Morris Johnson on the floor for a lot of that. But his play could be a real X factor here if he can at least stifle some of what Illinois wants to do offensively. Because UCLA is the better shooting team. It's not by a drastic margin. Illinois is well outside the top 200 in three-point percentage. UCLA is at least 153rd. I think maybe the best defensive skill this team has is their ability to cause havoc and force turnovers. They're awesome at this, one of the top teams in the country. In Illinois, they're generally using Yakusonis and Boswell at point guard. Yakusonis is a 25% turnover rate. He's been very reckless with the ball at times this year, and it comes in spurts. It's not every single game. So that's the matchup I want to watch here. I'm not sure how this is going to play out. But I think if you have Illinois fully healthy, taking advantage of good shot making if they get it or attacking the rim, they're the team I would prefer. A little worried by their game plan. We haven't seen them shoot less threes very often. It's just really a one-game sample. And does Ade Mara prevent some scoring at the rim? So it's basically a full stay away for me. We have UCLA projected at 71 points, Illinois at 76.5. Last game we'll do today. Again, hopefully we'll do more of these in the future, trying to just innovate, get our feet wet with some of these videos to start the year. It's a Big East matchup between UConn and Creighton. It's a 3-point spread in favor of the home team, Creighton. The total is 144. UConn's been listing a lot of players on their injury report lately. None of them have been missing time. Today, it's Solo, Ball, Hassan, Diarra, Aiden, Mahaney. I think Diarra is clearly hurt. Ball, I'm not sure. Mahaney, who cares? He sucks. Creighton, Pop Isaacs has been out for basically the whole year. Played a couple games at the start and then haven't seen him since, nor will we. But rematch again, January 18th. These teams played. UConn fell to Creighton 68-63. That was on their home floor. But Liam McNeely missed that game. I think the big thing here is both teams can shoot. UConn's 8th in effective field goal percentage, 56 from 3. Creighton is 16th in effective field goal, 120th from 3. I mean, both these teams just lethal. UConn specifically, Solo, Ball, 45.5% from 3. Creighton, Stephen Ashworth at 38%. Honestly, it's a little bad for him. But defensively, like, how do these teams defend these shooters? So far, UConn's been worse at this. They ranked 292nd in opposing three-point percentage. That's a little suspect to me. They did get back Liam McNeely, who can cover some like wingers and three-point shooters. So he's the best defender on the team. Him being back should help. But, like generally on paper, you would expect Creighton to be the worst three-point defense between the two. Like their defense flows through Kalkbrenner. He's the defending Big East Defensive Player of the Year. He wins this award every year, but he protects the rim. So to beat Creighton, sometimes you have to shoot over the top of them, and that's how they've lost games at times. If that's the case today, it kind of puts the weight of this defense on Jemiah Neal and Jackson McAndrew. But they've been their second and third most important defenders. They can cover some of those big athletic guards and wingers that UConn has. Outside of just like the shooting metrics, which prefer Creighton, which was a surprise to me again, just based on what we know about how Creighton plays defense. Rebounding, turnover margin, most of the peripheral stats, they're pretty even between the two. The only one that we see a pretty drastic difference in is foul margin, where Creighton kind of laps UConn. Creighton never gets in foul trouble. And then on the other side, I think the margin's so wide because Samson Johnson exists and he just can't keep his hands to himself. Fouls out of like every single game. Luckily, they're a little deeper with McNeely back, but not really too many edges on the periphery. I'm still interested in buying UConn with McNeely back. Better shooting team overall. I think they should have ways to shoot over Creighton. Again, I'm a little worried about the road trip, but currently make this 71 points, UConn 75 with Creighton. I think you could argue that with McNeely back, this should be closer, which is where I tentatively lean. I did take Kalkbrenner over a half an assist. This game has a pretty decent pace and a pretty decent total at 144. He's averaging 1 assist per game, so small margins there, but I think it does make a little bit of sense. All right, so those are our 6 games up. If you could subscribe, this channel is new, it would help a ton. I appreciate you if you've done that. Again, hopefully just trying to make these videos better over time. And if you have feedback on those, please leave it below. Otherwise, thank you for watching. It is not lost on me. You guys are taking some time away to watch the video, and I appreciate it. Until next time, good luck. We'll see you later.